I love this very familiar story to many of us, don't you, of the Good Samaritan. He would have been a person who was not of the church, but he instinctively saw someone in need and he helped them. He did the right thing according to Jesus. When a priest, a pastor, a person, a leader of the church just passed this guy by, and a Levite who would have been a very learned man in the church just passed the guy right by. But the Samaritan of all people, reached out and did the right thing. What do you think Jesus is trying to tell us in today's story? How do we reach out and do the right thing? Well, friends, sometimes it's as simple as offering your hand to one person in need. We saw a great example of that here in eastern Iowa. Just earlier this month, there was a cross-country meet, and there was 2 high school boys. Did you hear this story? And the one boy was struggling and the other boy helped him, and they crossed the finish line together. Actually, to give you a little context, the boy who needed help was by the name of Adam Todd. And he is the son of Dale Todd, who was a Cedar Rapids council member, commissioner at the time. I know Dale well from my days in news reporting, and got to interview him a lot and really respect Dale Todd and all that he's done for our church, and he loves our church and his wife as well. So their boy Adam has a type of epilepsy and some ADHD, and running really helps reduce that, reduces his stress. But he tends to kind of get off course every now and then. They have a person who watches him, but these cross-country races, you've all seen these or been to them. There's a lot of blind corners and so forth. And sometimes Adam gets off track, and he did earlier this month up at Noelridge. And then another boy. A boy from Iowa City, City High, a whole different school, competitor, a whole different community, happened to see Adam on a blind corner and took his hand and helped him finish the race. Thankfully, Dale shot some video of this, and Johnny Campbell, our old sports director at KCRG, did a feature on it, and oh, by the way, ABC News picked up on it and named both boys their Persons of the Week. I believe we have that news story. Let's take a look at it.
Tonight here, our Persons of the Week. The high school cross-country meet, more than 900 runners, the competition intense. When suddenly, one runner finds himself off course, confused, and a competitor who decides his own finish time is less important than helping another runner. Tonight, our Persons of the Week. 900 high school runners competing in a super meet in Iowa City. Evan Hansen, a sophomore from City High. Also competing, Adam Todd, a junior with epilepsy and autism from Cedar Rapids. Adam was diagnosed at 3.5. Near the end of the 5K race, he got off course, and Evan spotted him and ran back to help.
He stopped. He looked a little confused. I started just running behind him.
He ran the last 1.5 miles right there with Adam, holding his hand the entire time.
I was mostly just saying stuff like, "Let's go, Adam. We can do it. Not much left. We're almost there."
The boy who needed help, his father, was watching.
People around me were crying, and you could see by the smile on Adam's face that things were going to be all right.
And Evan, who was there to help Adam with one more gift, letting Adam finish first.
I just felt like it was probably more important for Adam to finish the race than me.
And so we choose Evan Hansen and Adam Todd, true champions, and we thank KCRG and Cedar Rapids right there for the race. Proof there is good news. I'm David Muir. I hope to see you Monday night. Good night.
Proof there is good news, right? Well, we are fortunate today to have guests with us, ABC's Persons of the Week. Adam and Evan, they're here today. Will you help me welcome them to our church? Now, let me tell you the rest of the story. As Paul Harvey used to say, I've conversed a lot with both families this week, and I wanted to know a couple questions. One, what motivated Evan to do what he did, to reach out his hand? And two, why was this such a big deal to our country? If you know Adam or know his story, and as I've gotten to know from his folks, that he's actually gotten off course a couple times throughout his running career. And there have been other boys in other schools that have taken his hand and helped him, but why this time? What was the deal? What was special about this time? Well, going back to that first question, talked to Evan's dad, Scott, on the phone, and Scott says, quite honestly and candidly, Evan didn't reach out his hand in faith. He was not motivated by faith. And as soon as Scott told me that, I said, oh my gosh, that is today's gospel story. The Samaritan didn't do what he did out of faith. He reached out his hand to this person because instinctively it was the right thing to do. And that's exactly what Evan did. It was the right thing to do. And moreover, Scott said, I'll be quite honest with you, Evan, has gone through a growth spurt and he has some really bad knees and he's not the greatest of runner right now. And I can totally identify with that. Okay? I love running. I just finished my first half marathon and I finished in slightly over 2 weeks. So, Evan, I know you, buddy. So his dad said, here he was second to the last out of 900 runners, and he was thinking to himself, I may not finish with my knees. But if I reach out and grab this boy's hand, we're going to finish together. And they did. And we know, don't we, people of faith, that when we reach out our hands to help somebody, we get something out of it too, don't we? Amen? It's not a one-way proposition, it's a two-way street. And I love how ABC News changed their nomenclature on their person of the week, and they named it persons of the week. Because Adam gave to Evan as much as Evan gave to Adam. Friends, that's how it works. Jesus didn't come here to start some new social program where we throw a few dollars at people in need and forget about it. Yeah, those of us who are afflicted with affluenza are called to help those financially in need. But what happened in the story of the Good Samaritan? Did he just throw a few bucks at him and move along? No, he picked up the man. He put him on his own animal. In our today, it would have been put him in the passenger seat of a car. And he drove him to the next town. And do you imagine riding on that vehicle, that animal together, that they might have had a bit of a conversation? That they would have gotten to know each other? That the both of them would have helped each other understand the sense of community and calling, that we're all in this together. We're all created by God, redeemed through His Son Jesus, and called to love and care for one another. And when they got to that city, the Samaritan man not only stopped there, but he put him up at a hotel, and he told the hotel director, you take care of his entire needs. Now, why would a person do that for a perfect stranger? I would argue that this man was no longer a perfect stranger to the Samaritan. That he was a person that this Samaritan knew and cared for. And they'd come together in a sense of community. And it all started by reaching out a hand. A kid lost on the course. Now, Evan's dad, Scott, also said his son didn't do this for fame or glory, which gets to my second question. Why the big hubbub this time? You see, Scott said when this great event happened, it was back on the back end of the course in the boonies where there were no people. There were no cameras. But Evan instinctively put out his hand, and the boys finished together. And like I said, this has happened before, but why this time? Well, the Iowa City coach, Evan's coach, said, perhaps when this story came out, it was at the time of the third presidential debate. And oh, haven't those been fun? And the coach said, I think our nation just needed this. We needed to hear that it's not about some corrupt politician or the other corrupt politician, but it's about Americans. It's about Christians. It's about people doing the right thing. And there was no committee that had to be done for Evan to do what he did. There was no church meeting for the Samaritan to reach out and help that person in need. They had all authority they needed. And oh my gosh, does that speak to us on Reformation weekend? Because you see, on October 31st, 1517, 499 years ago, there was a young monk by the name of Martin Luther in the Catholic Church that looked at what he felt was a corrupt authority in the church and that was stifling people from getting out and loving one another and understanding God. And they were using this vindictive God to say, listen, you need to listen to us and do what we say or you're going to go to hell. They put this wrath-filled God on top of people. And the God that Martin Luther had come to know was so vastly different. The God Luther knew was a God of grace, a God of love, a God of forgiveness, the God of Jesus. He says, I don't recognize my God in this church anymore. And so he wrote some notes down, 95 of them, and put them on the church door, which would have been the bulletin board of the day, and said, friends in faith, we need to change. And they did. And Luther's key argument was, we've got the authority. The church doesn't. You don't need to go through the church to do these things. You don't need to go through a priest or a pastor or any other intermediary. Luther says, I'm going to give you all little black and white collars, and you're all going to be my priests. You're the priesthood of all believers. And friends, it doesn't matter your age, how young you are, how old you are, what skin color you have, how much money you make, what job you do, what part of town you come from, what school you run for. You have it in you. It's been given by God, your Creator, to reach out your hand and do the right thing. Why was Luther so motivated? So motivated to do this. And he was right, by the way. He was right. The Catholic Church that he knew and loved and quickly kicked him out, a few decades later changed their corrupt ways. Our Catholic brothers today are not our Catholic brothers from 500 years ago and sisters. And I love Pope Francis. Love Pope Francis, who recently said, listen, Luther was right in a sense, and that the church was no role model at the time. And this is the Pope. The Catholic Pope said this recently. That young Martin Luther was a revolutionary in helping us understand the God of grace. Now, how about our Catholic brothers and sisters? Friends, there's a lot of work happening on the 500-year anniversary next year of us coming together. And I say we could do a whole lot more work in being humble in coming back to our Catholic brothers and sisters the way Pope Francis has come to us. But why did Martin Luther, why was he so passionate about this grace-filled God that gave us all the authority to go out, freedom essentially, the freedom of a Christian to go out and serve? Well, Luther knew this. The God who created you and created this whole world and all the mess that we've made of it, looked at this great world, the whole entire mess, and he decided to do something about it. He came to this earth in his Son Jesus the Christ, and God reached out his arms as far as he could on that cross so that we would all have our hands reached out to us and we would all feel included, loved, forgiven, and empowered to go out and serve. Amen.